Hello everybody, my name is Ragat. Welcome back my channel Health Fitness 1047. Here is the episode new. Follow me.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're jumping into a deep dive on the film Straw. It's a story centered on a single mother pushed right to the very, very edge.
And that title, Straw, it kind of immediately signals where we're heading, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the absolute last straw for someone.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've pulled from several places, some review bits from The Hollywood Reporter, an article from Netflix Tudum that really digs into the ending.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
And also a piece from The Independent talking about how the film was well received.
Right. So our mission here really is to use these sources to understand, well, the relentless pressures that build up for the main character, Jania, how she gets to that breaking point, you know. Explore the big themes the film is tackling.
Yeah.
And see how it actually landed, you know, with the critics versus the folks watching at home.
Okay, so let's start by setting the scene. What the sources describe as Jania's just incredibly difficult day. Like, drawing from these articles, her situation feels instantly precarious.
Oh, absolutely. The Tudum piece and others, they really highlight the specific financial desperation right from the get-go.
It's not just general struggle, is it?
No, she's in full crisis mode. Needs $40 for her daughter Arya's school lunch debt that day.
Wow, that specific.
Yeah, and at the same time, she's facing eviction. Like, nowhere else to go.
In the work situation, that adds another whole layer of stress. There's this altercation involving WIC.
Right, the Women, Infants, and Children program.
Showing she's trying to use the systems that are supposed to help, but it's still causing friction. And her boss, Richard, Glenn Turman plays him.
Yeah, he comes across as just incredibly dismissive, doesn't he? Refuses her plea for an advance, just flat out.
Even though she's clearly desperate.
It's presented as one of those days where, like that Tudum article says, everything that can go wrong goes wrong. It's not just one setback. It feels like every single door is slamming shut on her.
But then something even worse happens, right? Much worse than the money problems.
Yeah, the sources talk about this devastating call from Arya's principal.
And then the threat from Child Protective Services. CPS.
Exactly, because of bruises on Arya.
Yeah.
And Janiyah knows, the sources say she knows, they were just from a slip in the bathtub.
But the system doesn't necessarily see it that way immediately.
No, it moves fast, rigidly. And this is where you really see Janiyah's core struggle laid bare.
There's that quote from Taraji P. Henson in the Tudum article.
Right, saying Arya is the thing that is keeping her alive, like her sense of belonging.
So the thought of losing her daughter, even just temporarily at this point.
It just rips away her whole reason for putting up with everything else. Her foundation crumbles.
And the pressure just keeps piling on after that, doesn't it? We hear about this racist cop, Officer Oliver.
Yeah, runs her off the road, takes her expired license, her car gets impounded. Just one hit after another.
And she goes back to work, still hoping for that check.
Still pleading, yeah. Only for Richard to fire. And tells her the final check will be mailed.
Mailed. When she needs it now.
Exactly. And then, final blow. She gets back to her apartment.
And her stuff is on the curb.
All her belongings. Put out by the landlord.
It's relentless. Almost hard to believe one person could face all that in one day.
The sources really paint this picture of systemic failure, you know? Housing, social services, the police, even her job. It all just converges on her.
It's this constant battering, this chipping away at every single support she might have had.
Yeah, and that's what builds towards her hitting that last straw. It's cumulative. Yeah. Not just one big thing initially, but this grinding pressure from all sides.
Which leads us to the grocery store incident. She goes back to Richard's store, completely at her wit's end.
Begging again for that check she needs so badly.
And then, bam, violence erupts.
Masked gunmen storm in, robbing the place. But the sources, they really zero in on this specific moment.
The struggle over the backpack.
Yes, because it has Oria's seizure medication in it. Suddenly, it's not just a robbery. It's a fight for her child's actual life. The stakes are incredibly high right there.
So in all that chaos, Jania gets a gun. She shoots one of the robbers.
And then, one source uses the term fugue state, like she's dissociated from extreme stress.
And she kills Richard.
Yeah. And the sources also mentioned Richard's final horrible accusation that she was involved because one robber knew her name.
Which just adds another layer of cruelty to it all.
It really ties into something Tyler Perry is quoted saying in one of the sources, "Nobody sees us."
You mean like Richard not seeing her desperation?
Exactly, but maybe bigger than that too. Reflecting her whole experience that day, being invisible, unheard, unseen by everyone, until she's pushed to this absolute extreme.
So, covered in blood, check finally in hand, she goes across the street to the bank.
And this is where the accidental hostage situation kicks off. She's not going in there to rob it.
No, she just wants to cash that $500 check. It's like her first step, maybe, to getting Arya back.
But another roadblock. She needs ID.
And her license was confiscated by that cop earlier.
Right. So the sources describe her just reaching total breakdown. She puts the gun, she's still holding the robber's gun on the counter.
Which, understandably, sends the bank into immediate lockdown.
Yeah. And the bank manager, Nicole Sherry Shepard, plays her. She's terrified at first, obviously. But the sources point out how she starts to see Janaya's desperation. There's fear, but maybe a little compassion, too.
And then that detail about the science project.
Oh, yeah. Arya's blinking science project light in the bag. Cole sees it, thinks it's a bomb.
So she calls in a bomb threat.
Exactly.
Right.
Which escalates everything massively. Even though, as the source makes sure to point out, Janaya didn't set out to commit a crime today, it just spirals.
The Hollywood Reporter review apparently compares it to Dog Day Afternoon.
Which is interesting, structurally.
Yep.
Another tense bank standoff.
But the motivation is totally different.
Completely. And the sources, and Perry himself, they emphasize that. Dog Day Afternoon starts with criminal intent. Janaya just wanted to cash a check. Big difference in why she's there, even if the situation looks similar on the surface.
Okay, so outside, the police response, we get introduced to Detective Raymond, played by Teyana Taylor.
Right, and she becomes Janaya's sort of counterpart on the police side.
The sources describe her as a black woman on the force who, maybe uniquely in this situation, gets it. Understands the pain, the pressure.
Yeah, she seems to grasp how someone could reach that breaking point. Taylor's quoted saying her own experience as a single mom gives her empathy and sympathy for Janaya.
So she doesn't just see a criminal.
No, she starts digging deeper. Tracks surveillance footage, talks to Janaya's neighbor Benny, played by Sinbad.
Oh, Sinbad's in this.
Yeah. And his testimony, that the sources note, is pretty important. He tells Raymond about Janaya always being kind, always giving him change.
Which reinforces Raymond's feeling that this isn't some hardened criminal.
Exactly. It paints a picture of someone in just extraordinary distress.
Yeah.
And that shapes how Raymond handles things.
So she negotiates with Janaya over the phone.
Mm-hmm. And then confronts Officer Oliver, the racist cop from earlier.
The one who took the license and stuff.
Yeah. Raymond actually slaps him and kicks him off the scene. Meets one of Janaya's demands right there. Shows her empathy in a very direct way.
Wow. So there's this connection forming, isn't there, between these women?
Yeah, it's striking. The sources really emphasize how the relationships between Janaya, Nicole the bank manager, and Detective Raymond become kind of central.
One source even says it makes the film easier to endure.
Which makes sense. And Tyler Perry's view on it from the Tudum article is really insightful. He sees them as representing three different types of black women who are all the same black women,
Different walks of life.
but can all empathize with each other. It's about finding that shared humanity, that understanding, even in these terrible circumstances.
Okay, but then comes the film's huge reveal, the twist that just changes everything.
Yeah, right at the peak of the standoff tension. Janaya gets a call from her mother, Dolores.
And the news is just devastating.
Her mother tells her the truth. Arya didn't just get bruised. She died of a seizure the night before.
Oh my God, so the whole day.
Janaya's been hallucinating her daughter's presence, hallucinating her needs, the seizure medication, everything. It's all been driven by grief and trauma.
That must have hit hard, even for the filmmakers.
Apparently, yeah. Perry's quoted calling it jarring, intensely emotional, said it floored all of us during filming, made the crew cry.
It completely reframes everything Janaya did. It wasn't desperation to save her daughter now. It was profound grief manifesting as delusion.
Yeah. So the climax then unfolds with Janaya processing this unbearable reality. The FBI team's outside, ready to breach the bank.
She has that vision of herself.
Right. Riddled with bullets, according to one source, facing a violent end.
But Nicole, the bank manager, steps in.
Talks her down, shows that compassion again, and in this really powerful moment, they walk out together, side by side, facing the police.
And Detective Raymond is the one who meets them.
Yes. She steps forward, takes control, handcuffs Janaya herself, and just says, "It's nice to meet you."
Wow. That says a lot.
It really does. And the sources also mention protesters outside showing solidarity with Janaya, a hint that maybe society, or parts of it, understands her plight too.
So the ending isn't neat. It's described as bittersweet.
Definitely. She avoids that immediate violent death she foresaw, but she has to live on, deal with the consequences, the legal fallout, and most importantly, the reality of Arya's death.
Perry's quote about the audience deciding.
Yeah, the choice is left to the audience to decide what they want to believe about her future, about what it all means. It's complex.
Okay, so let's shift to how the film was actually received, because the sources show a pretty clear divide.
Oh yeah, a big split between the professional critics and the general audience reaction.
The independent piece really lays this out, right? Points to a strong audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that popcorn meter score is 80%, which is pretty high.
Okay.
Suggests a lot of viewers really connected with it emotionally.
But the critical reviews mention sound, less enthusiastic.
Much less so. Terms like reliably overwrought, suggesting maybe it was too melodramatic for them, or that Taraji P. Henson deserved more, like the script didn't match her talent.
One critic apparently said it had little finesse. Maybe finding fault with the pacing or subtlety.
Could be. But then you look at the audience comments quoted in the sources. They're passionate.
Like what?
Things like, touched me this hard, calling it phenomenal.
Yeah.
And huge praise for Henson. Acted her ass off. Greatest actresses, even calls for an Oscar nomination.
So audiences were really responding to the emotion to Henson's performance.
It seems like it, yeah. Maybe overlooking the things the critics keyed in on because they felt that emotional core so strongly.
So wrapping up this deep dive into Straw, we've traced Jania's day, this almost unbelievable series of pressures, systemic, personal.
Leading to that moment of explosion, then the gut-wrenching twist that recontextualizes it all.
And finally landing on that complex, bittersweet ending. Survival, but at immense cost.
And we've seen this fascinating split in reception. Critics finding flaws, maybe in that execution.
While audiences connected deeply, emotionally, especially with the lead performance.
Right, so it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Given what the film is about, these immense pressures on marginalized people, system failures, grief, what did that gap tell us?
The gap between the professional reviews and that strong audience reaction.
Yeah. Does it say something about how we value different kinds of storytelling? Or maybe about whose stories hit home hardest and for which audiences? It feels like a really central question coming out of this film.